Welcome back to Epic Renaissance. Today, we are unpacking some juicy Renaissance drama, all centered around a pair of feuding cousins. Imagine two queens ruling on the same island, both razor sharp, both convinced the other has no business breathing their air. Welcome to 1500s England, where a family dinner means someone's getting arrested. On one side, Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. A woman so committed to staying in power that she invented an entirely new political philosophy. Just don't get married. She saw what happened to her mother. She understood the game. On the other hand, Mary Queen of Scots, born into luxury, fluent in French, charming, tragic, and absolutely terrible at reading the room. She had every advantage except the one that actually mattered, the ability to see a disaster coming and walk the other way. Their rivalry didn't stay locked in palace gossip. It rewired European politics, split Christianity further apart, triggered assassination plots, military invasions, and diplomatic crises that rippled across 3 continents. This wasn't just personal. It was absolutely monumental in history. But before we dive into the juicy details, hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell. So here's what went down, and it's messier than any Netflix drama could make it. By the 1500s, England was running on fumes. Decades of royal meltdowns, beheadings, and religious whiplash that had left the country exhausted and deeply confused about which god was supposed to be in charge. Then Elizabeth arrived in 1558, a 25-year-old woman inheriting a fractured kingdom where half the population thought she shouldn't exist. Which, to be fair, is a hell of a way to start a career. Her sister, Mary, had just died. Catholics wanted her dead. The economy was in freefall, and somehow she had to fix it all before anyone realized how vulnerable she actually was. Meanwhile, in Scotland, things were almost comically different. Mary Stuart became queen at 6 days old, which means while Elizabeth was dealing with existential threats and assassination plots, Mary was still figuring out how to keep food down. She had exactly zero political awareness, and nobody bothered to give her any. Raised entirely in the French court, she learned courtly charm, languages, dance, basically every skill that looked impressive, but wouldn't protect her from actual danger. When her French husband died, she came back to Scotland as a Catholic monarch in a Protestant country that was halfway through a religious overhaul. So naturally, things got worse immediately. Elizabeth and Mary were basically opposite responses to the same impossible problem. How do you stay alive as a woman with actual power? Elizabeth's solution? Go cold. Stay calculating. Never let anyone close enough to betray you. She wasn't being prudish about staying single. She was being strategic. Every marriage proposal was a threat to her throne. Every child would be a claim competing with hers, so she built an empire instead. And honestly, it worked better than any marriage probably would have. Mary took the opposite route. Trust your heart, believe in romance, make decisions that feel right in the moment without actually thinking about consequences. Her first real move was marrying her cousin, Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, a guy who seemed perfect on paper, young, noble, charming. In reality, arrogant, deeply insecure, and apparently unable to handle alcohol without turning into a nightmare version of himself. Within a year of marriage, he murdered Mary's secretary, David Rizzio. Not in some political assassination, he stabbed him while Mary was watching, 8 months pregnant. It was like the Renaissance equivalent of a reality TV meltdown, and that was just season 1. Weeks later, Darnley was found dead outside the ruins of his own blown-up mansion. And somehow, Mary's new love interest, the Earl of Bothwell, was accused of organizing it. So, naturally, she married him. At this point, her advisors weren't even pretending to be supportive anymore. Unsurprisingly, the Scottish nobility revolted. Oh, not gradually, immediately. Forcing a queen to marry the man who probably killed her husband is a line even 16th century politicians weren't comfortable crossing. And these were people who were totally fine with most things. Within months, Mary was out. She signed away her crown to her infant son and basically became a fugitive in her own country. Her escape plan? Flee south and ask her cousin Elizabeth for help. This was either genius or catastrophic, possibly both. But Elizabeth wasn't in the mood for royal slumber parties. She was sitting on the English throne, finally getting comfortable, finally making progress, and then Mary shows up asking for refuge like some kind of exchange student who's overstayed their welcome. Elizabeth's immediate thought, this woman is a nightmare. Mary had a legitimate Catholic claim to the English throne. To half of Europe, she was the rightful Queen of England. To Elizabeth's Protestant advisors, she was an existential threat, pretending to need asylum. So Elizabeth did what any smart leader would do. She said yes to the visit, and never let Mary leave again. 19 years of house arrest, embroidery and letters, and slow-burning rage. Mary moved from castle to castle, each one a nicer prison than the last. She had guards, servants, some comfort, but she also had no freedom. While Elizabeth built the most culturally explosive period in English history, Shakespeare, naval dominance, global exploration, Mary sat in various castles watching from the sidelines, writing letters, embroidering, plotting. To understand why Elizabeth couldn't just kill Mary and get on with her life, you have to understand one thing. Religion in the 1500s wasn't a personal belief system. It was geopolitics, only wearing a cross. It was identity, politics, and violence all rolled into one package. And it made literally everything worse. Elizabeth's England was Protestant, brand new to the faith, fragile, constantly watching the door. The Pope had literally excommunicated her, which in Catholic Europe meant that killing her wasn't just justified, it was encouraged. Mary represented everything Elizabeth's enemies wanted. She was Catholic royalty with a direct claim to the English throne. To the Pope, to Spain, to every Catholic monarch in Europe, she was the legitimate queen. So Elizabeth's advisors created something revolutionary, an early version of MI6. Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spy master, created what you might call the first real intelligence network. They broke codes, turned informants, and did something genuinely innovative. They systematically dismantled every assassination plot before it could launch. It was paranoia with a budget, and it worked. For years, Mary stayed alive but imprisoned, and Elizabeth stayed paranoid but secure. Then, the Babington plot happened. A group of Catholic conspirators got caught planning to murder Elizabeth and put Mary on the throne. Shockingly, they were not subtle about it. And in the letters they found, the intercepted, decoded letters, Mary appeared to have given her approval. At least that's what the people decoding them said. The problem was that the code could be interpreted in different ways, but nobody was interested in nuance. Elizabeth's council had found exactly what they needed to keep Mary off the throne. Whether what was said in the letter was true or not became irrelevant. In 1586, Mary faced trial for high treason in a country she never actually ruled. The trial wasn't about justice, it was about theater. The verdict was written before anyone showed up. Everyone involved knew exactly how this would end. But Elizabeth hesitated on signing the death warrant, because executing a fellow queen wasn't just a bad look. It violated something fundamental about how monarchy worked. You just didn't kill other monarchs. That was the deal that kept everyone's head attached. Break that rule, and suddenly every throne in Europe becomes a lot less stable. Her advisors kept the pressure on. They didn't care about cosmic rules. With Mary alive, the country risked war and rebellion. With Mary dead, her advisors might finally get a good night's sleep. Finally, Elizabeth signed the warrant. Then, in classic Elizabeth fashion, she immediately regretted it and claimed her advisors had overstepped, which they probably had, but that doesn't unkill Mary. That's not how death works. It was February of 1587, Fotheringhay Castle. Mary was led to the execution block dressed in red, deliberately choosing the color of martyrdom. She was dignified, she was calm, and she publicly forgave her enemies. The execution was not clean. Multiple swings were needed to behead her fully. When they held up her head, her wig came off, revealing short gray hair. The execution was political theater at its most brutal. England and Europe watched. Some celebrated, others were horrified. Elizabeth supposedly cried when she heard it was done, or at least she made sure people knew she cried. Whether it was genuine grief or damage control remains unclear. Now, if you think the drama has been good up till now, just wait till you hear about Mary's posthumous revenge. Mary's son was James VI of Scotland. He grew up hearing stories about his beautiful, tragic mother, and when Elizabeth died in 1603, childless, alone, after 45 years ruling, James inherited both thrones and became James I of England. That's right, Elizabeth locked Mary up, executed her, and dedicated decades to preventing her bloodline from becoming relevant. She spent her entire reign trying to contain Mary's legacy, only to hand it to Mary's son. The universe really does have a wicked sense of humor. Elizabeth's reign became legendary, dubbed the Elizabethan Golden Age. Shakespeare, global exploration, naval victories, the Renaissance reaching its height, everything she built defined an era. But it was built on the corpse of her greatest enemy. Mary became mythology. Some see her as a martyr to Catholicism, others as a cautionary tale about passion overwhelming judgment. Artists and writers obsessed over her for centuries, the beautiful queen destroyed by circumstances and her own questionable choices. Both women got exactly what they wanted, just not the way they imagined. Elizabeth got power. She kept it for 45 years through pure willpower and paranoia. Mary got immortality. She became a symbol, a tragedy, a story people still tell. Amid all this chaos, Elizabeth and Mary never met, not even once. They spent their lives orbiting each other like twin stars fated to collide. One died for her crown, the other lived for hers. Both changed history, not because they were flawless, but because they refused to disappear. So, what do you think? Was Elizabeth a visionary or just a cold-hearted survivor? Was Mary a martyr or her own worst enemy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more history that goes past the textbooks, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. Until then, remember that history isn't just old stories, it's humanity, dressed in ruffles, wielding daggers, and trying its best not to get dethroned.